speak, would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner, or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity not to make friends
you know what? I'm
but
sorry. I
just
need
get
to send you
something
Dr. Malvo's information. I apologize for that.
No worries. Whenever you get a chance.
Let me do that right now.
Medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Sure. Good morning and God bless you. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
To recognize, learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org.
Thank you.
Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the
Okay,
Ad
wait a
Council.
minute. What's your name, Alex?
At St. Jude, researchers are working around the
Looking for
clock
everybody but
to
Alex.
to
Oh, Lord have
combat
mercy.
We got 1 minute.
Okay. All right, honey.
My name is Joel, and I was diagnosed with
Everybody
osteosarcoma, which is
but you.
bone cancer, and I came to St. Jude as a 7-year-old because doctors had discovered a tumor in my right shoulder. St. Jude was amazing early on. Even as a 7-year-old, they found a way to explain it to me, to have other people talk to me. That by the time I walked out of here 7 months after the amputation, I was fully adjusted to using my left arm, so I could jump right back into school and have no qualms or no worries about it.
30 seconds.
So I'm lucky enough to be married to Lindsay, who is also another former St. Jude patient who I actually met at a St. Jude event. She was in the middle of her treatment. I had finished mine just a couple of years before and just told her I loved her. Luckily, she reciprocated, told me the same thing back,
Okay,
and
just
we were
sent
fortunate
you
enough
the
to get
number.
married on the St. Jude campus.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Jude
thank you.
Children's Research
Thank you.
Hospital.
10 seconds.
8 o'clock.
Saving
Perfect.
children. Learn
Thank
more
you.
at stjude.org.
Stand by.
Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Hey, everybody. The DNC is on their way to Chicago, or they are on their way to Chicago. We will be here in Chicago in the summer of 2024. So you don't want to miss the latest and the greatest news. All of the players from the Democratic National Committee will be on this station. So please keep it locked here and spread the word about the great WCPT. I am Santita Jackson. I want you to call me this morning, 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. We're going to be talking with attorney C.K. Hoffler about this decision that's in the Supreme Court. They're listening to the Purdue case. The Sackler family owned Purdue Pharma. And what's interesting about them is that their personal wealth, and they've reaped billions, their personal wealth has been protected while their company's public wealth is being they're turning a portion of it over to people who they help to addict to opioids. And when you see the number of pills that were dropped on communities, it was very clear if there's some causal link between the addiction that these poor white communities experienced and the hundreds of millions of pills that were dumped on communities in the tens of thousands. You cannot make this stuff up. The numbers will astonish you. And we've talked with Chris McGreal from the Guardian. Indeed, his book, American Overdose, is a must read. But we've got more to talk about with Attorney Hoffler, because now the families who were addicted to the opioids are saying, look, no. It's not enough for Purdue to pay. I want the Sacklers to pay. They should not remain billionaires while those of us who they feel addicted them to these opioids, while they go free and become and stay very wealthy. So what do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and then Harvard president and MIT's president and UPenn's president. Boy, they were grilled before Congress yesterday, and they were accused of not protecting Jewish students on the campuses. And so the question becomes, Is that true? Number one. And are they supposed to protect Jewish students? Because on one level, you can't really protect people from hate speech, but what you can do is try to create an environment where people are not hateful. Or are they trying to shut down, or is this an attempt to shut down discussion, to mute pro-Palestinian voices? Want to know what you think? And what is the appropriate way to be on a college campus? See, when you get to college, everybody's got different kinds of opinions about everything. And you hear, at least you should on a campus, you hear you can hear everyone from the most right wing to the most left wing, and you go and you hear them and you listen, right? Well, some people are saying that should not be so. So you let me know. I mean, I think you should, and I think that you should make your own decisions, and there's that. But, I want to know what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, and give me your thoughts. Let's get to some of these headlines. Donald Trump was accused of, quote, sending supporters, close quote, to the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Federal prosecutors went further and tying the former president to the 2021 attack at a new court filing. They accused him of lying about elections and encouraging violence. Prosecutors said they intend to introduce evidence of these acts at the former president's criminal election obstruction trial, scheduled to begin in D.C. in March, right in the throes of the primary season. Senate negotiations over sending more aid to Ukraine are breaking down. Republicans are demanding U.S. border restrictions in exchange for billions in Ukraine aid. Yesterday, at least a dozen senators walked out of a classified briefing. What do you think? Should more money go to Ukraine? Is Ukraine being stood up? Can we afford to fund all of these wars? Really, really, really? What could tens of billions of dollars do for your city, your town, your state? You let me know. The Senate is set to hold a vote on the package today, but it appears likely to fail. Israeli strikes in southern Gaza are overwhelming hospitals. Indeed, the United Nations says that the most unsafe place for a child to be in the world is Gaza. 70% of those killed in these Israeli strikes have been women and children. A school where civilians were sheltering was bombed as Israel expanded its offensive in southern Gaza, the South's largest city. What do you think about that? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had a contentious meeting with families of hostages still held by Hamas, who accused him of not doing enough to return them. The fourth Republican primary debate is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama tonight. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who's surging in the polls, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy will be on the stage tonight. Haley has emerged as the most viable alternative to Trump, but former President Trump is still far and away the favorite in the Republican column. Trump critic Liz Cheney is considering a third-party presidential run. Remember, though, everybody, she voted with President Trump 90% of the time. 90% of the time that she was in Congress. Fully automatic weapons are reappearing on U.S. streets. A small device that plugs into some semi-automatic handguns and rifles can make them capable of firing 20 bullets in 1 second. The devices can be made by, get this, using 3D printers. In 2021, 27 guns were recovered with these conversation switch devices. Those are some of the headlines, everybody. In Chicago, it's going to be crisp day, but 40 degrees and cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 44 degrees, partly sunny. In the NBA, the Hornets will be facing Chicago in Chicago, and the Spurs will be facing Minnesota in Minnesota. No NFL games last night. In the NHL, the Predators 4, Chicago 3, the Wild, hey, congratulations, 5, and the Flames 2. Oh, Pastor Vicki Johnson, so much is going on. So much is going on. How are you? And how can we worship with you? I can't believe, I don't know how you're doing 2, not 1, but 2 churches, but you go, my sister.
Well, yes, do the best that I can. You can worship with me at Lebanon Lutheran Church at 9 o'clock a.m. on Sundays at 13100 South Manistee, and then at 11:30 a.m. at St. Thomas Lutheran, 80th and Jeffrey Boulevard at 11:30 a.m. for the Hour of Power.
I love it. So give us the good news
Amen.
today. We need it. We need it. There's just so much going on, right?
Indeed, indeed. Well, good morning, Santita, and good morning to all of your morning stars and friends. There is good news.
Yes, you're muted.
Do it. Fathers do it. Children do it. Medical professionals do it. Officers do it. Essential workers do it. Ministers do it. Musicians do it. And even radio personalities do it. What is it that everyone does? Stress.
Yeah.
I'm sure you are all familiar with stress, a state of mental or emotional strain caused by adverse circumstances. High levels of stress normally manifest in the body in various ways, such as acne, headaches, chronic pain, sickness, insomnia, lack of energy, changes in appetite, depression, and a lowered immune system.
Yes, Miss Jackson, you're muted.
You will hear people advising you not to stress.
And you have a caller.
Which I think is unrealistic because you are bound to be worried or concerned about something in life. So taking this into consideration, I'm going to just ask you to stress less. Stress less. You really don't have to be stressed about everything all of the time. Here are some tools that you can use to help you stress less. First of all, you can meditate. Quiet your mind with a guided meditation. There are plenty of them online. Secondly, you can exercise. Whatever your form of exercise is, walking, swimming, working out, or doing yoga. Exercise helps you to stress less. You can use positive self-talk. Instead of bringing yourself down, talk yourself up. Fourthly, you can use aromatherapy. Put scents around you that are calming or bring pleasant memories, like an apple pie. Fifthly, you can get a hug from someone or even give yourself a hug. You can make time for leisure, read a book, watch a movie, get a manicure, a pedicure, work a puzzle, or take a nap. You deserve it. And then seventh, you can pray. Matthew, the 18th chapter and the first verse says that we should always pray and not faint. During this holiday season where stress is on the rise, I ask that you use tools to stress less. You will be glad that you did. If you can do this, and I'm sure that you will, then to me, that's good news.
I appreciate that. Even as you hear my chug-a-lug in the background, you know, I realized I developed adult acne. Oh my goodness, in my mid 30s, early 30s, quite frankly. And what was interesting, I was talking to a friend of mine who's known me since about that time. And, he said, you look so bright, buoyant and fresh. And he said, when I met you, you had a lot going on, didn't you? I said, and I looked back to that time, Pastor, and I really did. I was under so much stress. And the thing is, I was using all of these drying products on my skin, and my skin is oily. So, when I finally went to, not to Betty Odom, because who's a great esthetician, and everyone, I go to Betty O's here in Chicago. But I went to an esthetician when I lived in New York, and I found one, and she said, the products that you're using on your skin are too drying. She said, you're being too hard on yourself. What a metaphor, right? What a metaphor.
Yeah.
Made me do some thinking about how hard I was being on myself. And so I want to thank you for that, because stress kills. Bottom line.
Oh, yes.
So
yes,
we need to hear a little bit more of that during the holidays, because this is a very stressful time for people. I mean, unhappiness is stressful, all that. Pastor, how can we worship with you? Because I think I need to get one of these sermons so I can de-stress myself. Yeah.
You can worship with me at Lebanon Lutheran, 13100 South Manistee at 9:00 a.m. each Sunday, and then scurry down or up to St. Thomas Lutheran at 80th and Jeffrey Boulevard at 11:30 a.m. for an hour of power.
Love you, Pastor Vicki Johnson. Pastor Vicki Johnson, sending you so much love today.
Love you, Santita.
Thank you so much. We've got Dr. Shanina Knighton, the world-renowned Dr. Shanina Knighton. So glad that she's back from Saudi Arabia, having been teaching over there. What's on your mind this morning? And what more than that, what should be on our minds this morning? Dr. Knighton.
Good morning. So I'm actually, it's interesting, in sync with the pastor in regards to just talking about stress and thinking about, honestly, she's right. Like in a season where we should be thinking more about gratitude, people are stressing about what it is they don't have opposed to what it is that they do have, and don't understand how that is impacting their immune system as well as their decision making. Yes, stress has a negative impact on the immune system, meaning that when you are stressing, you are releasing chemicals within your body that are causing your body to fight against itself instead of help you. And so what happens is as your body is fighting against itself, that might mean that you're more tired, you're more fatigued. That means that you may not be thinking as clearly as you should in order to be able to make decisions. And so when we talk about getting adequate sleep, when people are stressed, they don't get sleep like they should because they're too busy thinking about what it is that they're stressed about. But sleep helps boost your immune system. So you have to try hard to get enough of it. When people are stressed out, they may not eat as much as they should. Good nutrition, including lots of fruits and vegetables, helps to fuel the body. Like it helps to fuel the body to make sure that it's healthy. And I always emphasize people getting their zinc. Zinc in itself is a vitamin, a mineral, that increases the production of white blood cells and T cells that help you fight against infections. So making sure that you're getting, your nuts, your seeds, your beans, and your meats that are high in zinc. It's also too, when you are stressed, that if you are someone that drinks alcohol, making sure that you're limiting your alcohol intake for multiple reasons. One, because of the chemicals that are in it that lower the immune system. But the other aspect of it is the sugar. Remember how I mentioned before, 75 grams of sugar lowers the immune system for 5 hours. mentioned eating your carbs and drinking your carbs and what that can do to the body really quick. It's interesting. I know quite a few people that got sick a week after Thanksgiving or within a week after Thanksgiving. And when I asked them what it is that they enjoyed or they partook in, the sweets, honestly, I know for sure is what took them down. When we think about stress, sometimes we may tend to neglect our body and not exercise. Remember, regular exercise lowers stress and it can help maintain a healthy weight. It also helps to improve lung function. So when you're having some sort of respiratory illness, sometimes it's harder for you to breathe. And so weak lungs, they have a harder time fighting off infections or fighting off a cold, such as COVID-19 and pneumonia. So please make sure that you're exercising even during the times of stress. And always, 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 as I emphasize, Santita, I talk about the importance of hand hygiene. Remember, hand hygiene is the single most important way for you to prevent the transmission of germs, which means either getting germs or either receiving germs, getting germs or transmitting germs. So it's very important that you are cleaning your hands. During COVID, remember that there were instances where we may have not had a vaccine or other treatments. Hand hygiene was all that we had. During H1N1, before there was a vaccine, hand hygiene and making sure that you screened yourself from sick individuals was all that we had. It's very important that we take care of our bodies. It's very important that we understand that even still, we may want to get people gifts for the holiday. We may want to go certain places. We may have certain expectations of ourselves. But just during this time, just remember, practicing gratitude can help to lower that stress of thinking about something that you may not have or something that you wish you were doing.
Wash those hands, everybody. I mean, thoroughly clean them. Let's talk about the Sacklers and the opioid crisis. Should they keep their billions even though they flooded communities, poor white communities, with opioids and every place else? But they really, really hit these poor white communities. Back in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. How you doing?
I am doing pretty good.
Okay, all right.
And so, yeah, and so, like, I don't know, have you seen, it was a Netflix series about the opioids not too long ago, and I thought it was just so interesting and fascinating.
Look, what these people have, what they did was so dastardly. I mean, it's horrifying. I mean, like, here's some of the numbers. Purdue acknowledged delivering 5.7 million opioid pills between 2005 and 2011 to a small town, Kermit, West Virginia. They only have 380 people there. Guess how many pills they gave them? 5,264 pills for every. I mean, I'm just letting the audience know. 5,264 pills for every man, woman, and child. Then
Attorney Hoffler's on, and also you have a caller.
Okay, I'm gonna just tell Ken I'm gonna come to him. I'm gonna have him open it up. Okay.
It sounds good.
I mean, this is horrible. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, we've got Dr. Shanina Knighton, who's just back from Saudi Arabia. Hey.
Oh, hey, good morning, Dr. Knight. I was Saudi Arabia. That was been
teaching.
Oh, wow. Yes, absolutely amazing, eye-opening. I told Santita, I said, Jeddah is my Wakanda in real life.
Okay, all right. That is wonderful.
I'm so glad you had that experience,
yes.
and you will have many more.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Well, I knew you were gonna get out of here, girl, but she was frightening.
And how long were you there? How long were you there, if you don't mind me asking?
For a week. So not too long. I went to give a keynote and to teach.
Ah, wow. Well, that is incredible. That's a great.
Yeah.
You know, this is
And
it's
I'll
a
tell
reminder
you,
that. I'm
you
sorry.
said what, CK?
Yes.
But yeah, no, I was saying it was eye opening just in regards to sometimes you gotta see things instead of go by what people tell you.
Huh.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know, it makes you know, things that we see over here. I mean, you're looking at it from a different lens, and you were really you just got back, so you were in the eye of what's happening and playing out in real time.
Yeah.
You know, versus many of us who are here, who are speculating and have a certain perspective. You know, just eye opening. I would say life changing. For me, it's been life changing.
Exactly what it was. And then someone telling me, you know, and it's best instead of Googling about our culture to just ask us directly, because there's so many untruths, you know, on, let's say, Google or on some sort of like on the internet, you know, in regards to like what happens, what the expectations are, how it really is. And, you know, it's a negative connotation, but it was the exact opposite of what I thought. And in so many ways, refreshing.
10 seconds.
Talk
Stand
about
by.
safety of a country.
Stand by, everybody. We're coming up. Okay.
Stand by.
Okay, stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278. Want to know what's on your mind today? We're going to be talking about who is accountable, who should be held accountable for this opioid crisis. We already have seen Purdue Pharma have to turn over billions of dollars, but the Sackler family who own Purdue Pharma have been able to hold on to their billions. Is that right? What do you think about that? And then what about the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn who were grilled? I mean, boy, oh boy, did they face a really, really tough time on Capitol Hill yesterday. They were accused by Republicans of not protecting Jewish students on these campuses, shielding them from anti-Semitism, from even maybe allowing it. What do you think about that? I mean, if you allow a pro-Palestinian rally, is that a threat? Well, I want to know what your thoughts are. In the meantime, we're talking about how families are rallying for opioid accountability. So we need to know who should be held accountable. Before we do, I've got Ken on the line. Ken, what's on your mind, sweetie? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Santita. I'm a morning star.
I love you. I love it. I love it. I love it. Even if you're not a morning star, I still love you. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, Santita, I still think about the day I was at work. I was a certified drug counselor. Used to dealing with opiates from the street at the street level. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, white the pony and stuff like that. You know, white horse.
No, I don't know, but tell me.
You don't know?
No, I mean,
okay,
honestly,
well,
I don't know. I really don't.
Well, I'm used to dealing with people who are addicted to street drugs.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm fielding a call on the phone. A lady calls in and she says, "I need help. I'm addicted to opiates." I said, "What, heroin?" And she said, "No, pain pills. I'm hooked on pain pills and I need help." I said, "Lady, this is a street drug, you know, a drug. This is a drug. Yes, I'm hooked on a drug, pain pills." And even to this very day, and this has been maybe 30 years or 20 years later, I still recall that event of feeling helpless, because my training wasn't to deal with medication. It was to deal with marijuana, cocaine, heroin. It was to deal with that, not some doctor writing a prescription. So the people who enabled this opiate addiction among the seniors, and I mean, there was now.
Okay, hold on a second. I can hear something in the back. Hold on, Ken. I can hear something in the background, but I got another minute for you because I want Attorney C.K. Hoffman
Well,
to get to that.
maybe it's my air conditioning, my condition. Let me change another room.
Okay,
so Santita, all right. I am still devastated by that call from a sister who says I'm hooked on heroin. I'm hooked on medication, and my husband wants me to get help. And I was paralyzed. Couldn't. I transferred the call to a physician, but in this case, the physician is the problem.
Well, then let me ask you this. What about Big Pharma? I mean, because now what we're about to pivot to is along the lines of what you're talking about. The Sackler family, they own Purdue, the big pharmaceutical company. And wait a minute.
Okay.
Ken, hold on. This is unbelievable. There is a town in West Virginia, Kermit, West Virginia, 380 people, 5.7 million opioid pills were delivered to that town between 2005 and 2011. 5,200 pills for every man, woman, and child. Let me give you another. 2 West Virginia local authorities accused the distributors, these people, of turning this Cabell County into ground zero of the opioid epidemic by flooding the area of 90,000 people with 100 million opioid pills. Over a decade? What do you make of that?
Well, like I said, it's all enabling. And I know about the beach with Walgreens and Walmart and everything. But yeah, I think that the people who profited, everyone who profited should have to pay to the piper. For profiting everyone, no one. If you are part of that enabling line of drugs, medical, pharmaceuticals, you're part of that enabling line. You should be penalized.
Well,
you should have your day
in
court,
and not just in court. And cutting a check. I mean, I keep hearing Curtis Mayfield's song "I'm Your Pusher Man." Remember that? From Superfly.
Oh yeah,
the movie that I was not allowed to see because I was a little girl. But of course, the soundtrack was real big. But thank you for that. Thank you for that. By the way, how is the lady doing?
Oh yeah, I don't know, Santita. I mean, that's why I'm so devastated because I had no tools to deal with someone hooked on pain pills. I had no tools. I hadn't been taught that, so I still have a hole in my soul.
Well,
for that lady,
you did the best that you could, but Attorney C.K. Hoffman, you see how on the macro level and on the micro level how this impacted people, and so now it's before the Supreme Court. This one woman who lost a son to the opioid crisis said of the Sackler family, "I don't want their money. I want them in prison." What about accountability? Some people would say, okay, he became an addict. That's his fault. But wait a minute. When you flood a town, CK, of 90,000 with 100 million pills, you target a town of 380 people with, 5.7 million pills. Who does that?
Well, Santita, good morning. Now,
I heard that
think
sigh.
you may know this, but I got to. You heard a sigh because I am an opioid trial lawyer. I do opioid litigation. I represent the city of Flint, Michigan. And so I'm going to bring it home. I'm glad you started with a caller and thank him for sharing this, because what I want to share with him is addiction is addiction. And when you're accustomed to dealing with street drugs, there's no bigger street drug than heroin. And heroin is an opiate. So the impact of opioids, and this is something that we are completely missing, many of us in our community, is exceptional in the African American community. In West Virginia, people talk a lot about West Virginia, Santita, because the statistics are overwhelming. And West Virginia, because it's a blue collar, basically state where you've got mines, where you've got people who are injured, workplace injuries, working blue collar jobs a lot. And I'm not making disparaging comment about that. I'm just saying in some of those environments, the doctors were absolutely aggressive in prescribing opioid medications. And in the early years, the doctors were part of the problem. There were pill mills, meaning people could get opioids for any reason, no reason, without going through the traditional protocols that the medical protocols that a standard of care would mandate for a doctor to prescribe them. And so as a result, you had people that were hooked. Some opioids are more addictive than crack cocaine. So that's why it has become a crisis. And the thing that how it creeps up on you in our communities and all communities, quite frankly, is if you have a baby, like I did, if you have more than one baby, or if you have your first child, you're going to be prescribed an opioid, whether you have delivered naturally, which I didn't, or if you have a C-section. If you have any surgery, if you've been in a car accident, any of that, sort of the basic common things that we see in terms of pain management, the cure or what they give you to address pain is an opioid. So it is very, very common for people to receive opioids as a way of addressing pain. The way it becomes deadly, the way it becomes problematic, the way it has infected and impacted communities is that when doctors stop prescribing, based on the litigation, by the way, when they stop prescribing and being so abusive of the opioids with their patients, then people had to get a fix. And when you are addicted, you will feed that fix. And so you went from opioids that were legally prescribed by your doctor to on the street fentanyl to on the street drugs to address that addiction, because it is so highly addictive. We got to remember, at their core, opioids were designed to provide relief for cancer pain. I don't know if Dr. Knighton is still on the phone, but cancer pain.
Hold on, is Dr. Knighton still there? Because she wanted. Please get her back. Please ask her to come back, because she wanted to stay to look at this, because I think this is in her wheelhouse and yours. Cancer pain?
It absolutely is. Cancer pain. Opioids were created to address cancer pain. Now, anytime you take something that will get rid of cancer pain, some of the worst pain that we know exists in the history of medicine is cancer pain. And opioids were originally designed to address that. So imagine how powerful it is to have an opioid that would address or take away that cancer pain. Don't get me started, Santita. In our litigation, we sued over 20 defendants. And the people who are culpable, who need to be held accountable, are people who are involved in every step.
Dr. Knighton is back on.
Much like tobacco litigation or the tobacco industry, and I was a tobacco trial lawyer, the opioid industry, the compound duped the public. Initially, they duped the doctors and saying, oh, no, this is not addictive. Oh, it's not addictive. There might be addictive qualities, but it's not addictive. And of course, when something gets rid of pain and you're in excruciating pain, you've just had surgery and you take something and it gets rid of the pain, you're going to take it until you have no more pain. And then if you are taking an opioid that is highly addictive, then the next thing you know, you can't do without that. So from the doctors to the manufacturers to the owners to the people who did the promotions, the marketing, all of those people in the chain that chain need to be held accountable, and that's what this litigation is about.
Hold on.
So now the question
she's back. Just so that you know, she's back. Dr. Knighton is back.
Okay. Dr. Knighton, I was talking about the reason why I called your name to make sure you were still on the line and to pray that you were still on the line was because, as you know, with the exceptional training experience that you have, is that opioids were created originally to address cancer pain. And so the proliferation of opioids or products that have an opiate base, has just been devastating. Has been actually, doctors were using it as just, how you give aspirin to a patient for any type of pain, and it was getting out of control. And there were pill mills that people could go to and just get opioids legally, prescribed by a doctor. Very little oversight, very little input with the patient, and it was, in my impression, almost criminal. I have to be very careful, and criminal, but almost criminal in the sense that there was no oversight. So then litigation arose, congressional oversight. Now we are where we are. So now it's a time for accountability. Who should be held accountable? Everybody in the process. Everything. Because I'm on the side where I represent plaintiffs, and I see it every day. And what people don't realize in our community is when you see people strung out, they are strung out nowadays. Crack cocaine is like, well, whatever, that's history. It's opioids. The faith community has to absorb, Santita, let me bring it home to the church. It is the faith community that now is absorbing and taking care of middle class families who are so addicted. Because see, when you're on the street and you're doing street drugs, you're going to turn to the street for help. But when you're somebody who's working and are hooked because of a doctor prescribing and you go into that abyss, you turn to other organizations. You turn to the church. You turn to entities and institutions that can help you. So this opioid crisis is a crisis in the Black community. Please hear me. Because I remember when I first was doing the pitch to the city of Flint, which, as we know, is a predominantly Black city, the initial response was, well, how is this affecting our community? Boy, when we did our presentation, they were like, how in the world do we not know this? And we don't know this because it's been painted and marketed as really a suburban white problem.
Well, hold on.
It is a knee-deep.
It's a knee-deep problem. But see, now you see the SCOTUS blog says the Supreme Court is conflicted over this bankruptcy plan for Purdue Pharma. I mean, do they shield the Sacklers from accountability, from liability? Will they be allowed to keep their billions? I mean, I want to hear from you and Dr. Knighton, Attorney Hoffler. But
well, I'm going to defer to Dr. I'm going to ask Dr. Knighton to speak on that because I have a particular view because I'm in the litigation. I'm not in the litigation before the U.S. Supreme Court, but certainly Purdue is one of the people that we sued, obviously. And I have a particular perspective on that, but I think that I'd like to hear from Dr. Knighton first.
Well, she's here because you wanted her back. You said, I need a medical person.
So I just want to say, you're right, CK. It does impact our communities, but I think, and even too, there's the outpatient side of things, but there's also inpatient. And being a nurse that took care of patients pre-op and post-op, you are told that pain is whatever they say it is. I can tell you that many nurses can be put on a stand from around that time, and they will tell you how many times we got in trouble, meaning we got rolled up. We were told that we were wrong. We had conflict with doctors. Jobs were at risk when we told them that the patients were being given too much and that we felt that their pain for which they thought they were being treated for was not the pain that was adequate enough to have that amount of medication. Sadly, when I went into nursing, I'll never forget, I was on the floor at 24 years old, and literally within a year, two of my coworkers, my closest coworkers, because we all were on the unit at the same time, died. My one friend, who was 25, got caught stealing narcotics out of the drawer. And when she went, so the hospital in itself, a predominantly white hospital, she is African American, they reported her to the Board of Nursing. And instead of the Board of Nursing supporting her as we would have supported our patients, they fired her. She went home and she overdosed at the age of 25. So I lost two of my friends that I work with closely in the same manner because of that. When there is that pain scale, and we talked about this, a while ago, the fact that who created the pain scale, who validated the pain scale in terms of a scientist, okay, to say that pain is whatever the patient says it is. Where there is pain, and where it is whatever the patient says it is, the one question that never gets asked is, are we talking about an actual physical pain or are we talking about an emotional pain? And you're right. I agree 100%, CK. When we are talking about an opioid in the hospital, we are talking about crack, cocaine, and heroin on our streets because it provides the same exact ingredients. If we know, for example, that diacetylmorphine is heroin and morphine is included in some of those pills or in some of the treatments, we talk about hydromorphone and the derivatives of it, then we're essentially giving them street drugs, but just doing it in a legalized manner. And so I do agree. We have gone to a spectrum, and I'm saying collectively, of where there is accountability that needs to be held. But I do also empathize for the medical students, nursing students that have come in that wanted to do nothing but achieve a career in the medical field, but was coerced by leadership, coerced by their management, that this was the right thing to do, when deep down inside, many of them knew that it was not. And so it'll be fascinating and hurtful for me to see how much of that comes out when we're talking about how many people's arms were twisted in order for them to continue to give all of those drugs that nurses saw. I'm talking about decades before we are where we are right now. We saw this coming.
CK, I've got about 4 minutes left here. One of the questions before the court is, should the Sacklers' wealth, so much of which is derived from this crisis that appears, look, they dump these pills on these people. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red just dump the pills. Should they be shielded or not? I mean, I'm just asking. Oh, if it's a question that you shouldn't answer, I'd like to know from Dr. Knighton, since she's right there on the ground caring for these patients too. When you're saying pain, squeezing that button in that hospital bed.
Well, let me just say this. I really shouldn't answer that question directly, but I will give you a hypothetical. I will give you a hypothetical as a plaintiff's lawyer. As a plaintiff's lawyer, I believe everybody should be held accountable, period, end of discussion. In litigation, there are deals that are struck every day. And those deals that are struck enable settlements that sometimes are very, very helpful, productive, useful for those victims. And when there's a settlement and when there's a deal, sometimes there's a settlement, there's a deal. So I have to answer it in that way because I'm involved in opioid litigation. But let me just say this again. I believe that everyone should be held accountable. We all have to be held accountable. But to get out of litigation when we're on the hot seat, sometimes we strike deals. Criminals do it. They take plea deals. In a civil context, they settle and they agree to certain terms. And so I think all of that should be considered. But let me just say this, and then I'm going to pitch it to Dr. Knight. I'm so delighted that she's on the phone to give a perspective on this. The problem is not going to go away with a whole bunch of money. The problem is going to be addressed through programs, through treatment, through all of that, because just like any other addiction, throwing money at it's not going to help. There have to be programs. There has to be recourse. There has to be something that people can go to who are impacted, who are affected. And that's what the money can help to provide. That's what money going to municipalities, going to cities has helped to provide. So, U.S. Supreme Court, I bet they are conflicted. But welcome to the club, U.S. Supreme Court, and I hope you do the right thing.
I've got a minute and a half. Dr. Knighton, should their wealth be shielded? I mean, you've seen the impact. And when you hear that millions of pills were dumped on a community of 380 people gets 5.7 million pills dumped on it in 6 years, I mean, what is that? A community of 90,000 gets 100 million pills over a decade. What is that? Dr. Knight.
It's not surprising. It's not surprising, and I do think that they should be held accountable. At the end of the day, it's just like with anything else. You know, if your name is on it, then it is your responsibility. There are a lot of people that have died as a result of this. There are a lot of government dollars that are going to have to be put towards fixing this problem. So they should not be able to get off from not being held accountable when it is taxpayer dollars that is getting ready to have to alleviate the issue that they caused. And so, yes, they should be held accountable. The other piece, and I know we'll talk about this at another time, is when we think about treatments such as Narcan, I would hope that this company has no stake in creating the treatment after they've created the problem, because essentially that's something else that they should be held accountable for providing as well, to be the treatment for some of the things that are occurring.
Oh, my heavens. Take them out of it. Purdue. And please,
don't get me started.
And don't let them come back under another name. I mean, what is that? I mean, look, we paid for the COVID vaccine.
It's big business.
And now they want us to pay for the COVID vaccine. I'm like, are you nuts? What is that?
Yeah, but that's why I say, like, created the problem and then create the treatment of Narcan.
Oh, no.
So I'm curious to know if Purdue makes Narcan.
Oh, no. That does not work.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work. Stay right here. Let's talk about the grilling of the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn. They are being accused of not protecting Jewish students from anti-Semitism on those campuses. Harvard President Claudine Gay, their first black president, indeed, she had to defend pro-Palestinian marches on her campus. And what should happen on a campus? Hey, 3 of us went to college, and you know when you go to college, everybody comes and speaks. And you just have to swallow hard and deal with it, if it's someone with whom you disagree. But, we'll see. I want to know what you think, particularly in this moment. When a lot of Jewish students are feeling threatened, and they are being threatened, but so are pro-Palestinian demonstrators, and so are Muslims, and on and on and on. It's just that kind of time. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Call me at 773-763-9278. Back in a minute. Whew. Well, I guess we need to have an extended segment on that. But when I saw that, I knew you wanted to do with something legal. Was that okay, CK?
Yeah, no, that was great. And no, it's a huge. I when I saw you sent that over, that was wonderful because it's in my wheelhouse, and I have very strong opinions, obviously, about it.
No,
when you represent victims. I know. Someone text me. Someone just text me. CK, tell me how you really feel. Well, all right. But see, the thing is this. All accountability is important. I'm held accountable for everything that I do.
No.
So everybody else has to be held accountable. And just know this, there are different levels of accountability. So there have been settlements and payments that they may have made, but the ultimate accountability is should they receive the protection? That's the issue. Should they receive the protection? That bankruptcy, when you file for bankruptcy, you can be protected from this and shielded from that and all this and that. And that's the question. And that's a question before the court, with a lot of different subparts. And I note that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is feeling some kind of way. I'm not surprised she's feeling some kind of way. That would be consistent with what we understand of her. And it's a good thing she's feeling some kind of way. Because when you feel some kind of way, you're propelled to in that pen, if you are inking the opinion, or whether you are writing the opinion, or whether you are consenting or whether you are dissenting, it's important for you to feel some kind of way about these issues, I think, and that just ensures and protects the integrity of the process. So.
Well, I mean, look, I'm hearing you. I think that I think that they should be held accountable too. I really, really, really do. Because this to me is just it's awful. It's awful. I mean, when you see the number of pills they dumped, and when you dumped on these communities, and then when you see the impact, You see these people, oh, I'm 20. I'm like, I thought you were 70. No teeth, your skin is sallow, you're hollowed out. Oh my gosh. You're working these crazy hours, working these crazy jobs. I mean, come on. No. What they've done to these people
Mr.
is just
McKee
shameful.
and Attorney Fancher are on. Still
Attorney
trying to get a hold
Fancher?
of Dr. Malvo.
Okay, please do.
And the trillions of dollars involved. Okay, I'm being quiet. Good morning, Attorney Fancher. I'm being quiet on this because I think I said that.
No. I mean, that's why I pulled it up, and I started sending you that stuff. I said, okay, not that you did not know it already, right? But I said, well, let me just try and get this for her. So you all keep talking, Attorney Fancher, Dwight McKee. I don't know if Dr. Knighton is still there listening, but CK, you all talk with each other because I'm trying to do some other things right now. Well, say hello to each other. You all know each other. Come on, you don't need me for that.
Hey. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah.
How y'all doing?
Look, anytime I listen to CK, I learn something. We doing good. I'm doing good.
Oh, hey, Doc, how you doing?
She just came back from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I know. I heard it.
I did, and a life-changing experience.
But tell them, because we're on Facebook and whatnot. How was it a life-changing experience for you?
So the culture, so you can read and hear about many things, and there's always this, you can't do this and you can't do that. But honestly, I mean, it was peaceful. Just to be in an environment, literally, they have no homeless. So they make sure that at minimum, everyone has food, shelter, and security. Being able to experience food with no additives, right? And just fresh food. Constantly, fruit being a staple, fried food being a delicacy in so many ways because they eat healthy for the most part. Theft, not having to worry about theft or like robbery, like their percentage, I want to say, is like less than 1%. So being able to sit your bags down and not have to worry about not being able to come back to them, it was just like a quality of life thing that I would say even outside of my experience of realizing how advanced they are and progressive they are when it comes to technology, when it comes to healthcare, and just taking care of people. And I think that was one of the most eye-opening things because you always hear how behind they are, how, the U.S. is the richest place, but you watching people utilize the resources that they have to maximize and be abundant. And they're at different income levels, but at minimum, everybody eats and everybody has somewhere to live.
Well,
I'm gonna ask a great colored question. You know that, right?
Oh, please.
So did you ride a camel? So did you ride a camel?
I did not ride a camel. I didn't ride a camel. And get this, in our reception, was on or off the Red Sea. So we had a reception off the Red Sea. There was the white stand that was there. So everything was there, but it was absolutely, it was a city. It was
1 minute.
In the actual city. It's built up and progressive. And FIFA is actually there this week. So the soccer tournament.
Well, what's interesting when you hear about what you can and cannot do over there, it comes down to did we get Dr. Malvo yet?
No.
Okay, try her again. But it comes down to that which is depraved. Okay, you can't have sex in public. You can't public displays of affection. Look, no.
30 seconds.
Understand someone's culture and deal with that. I mean, what is that?
Yeah. No, but that's the thing. Even with that, you can still hold your husband's hand, though, right?
Of course.
You may not be able to just be inappropriate.
Yeah. You don't have to. You don't
but
have the
it's
right to walk in
inappropriate
there.
for kids.
Yes. I want to see all that vulgarity.
That's it. They're protecting their kids.
Because we've gotten just way out of hand
Stand
over
by.
here. Stand by. But that's another discussion we need to have. But stand
We
by.
can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. The Democrats will be here, and so will we in the summer of 2024. The most time spent listening of any radio station in the Chicago area was WCPT during the last election cycle. So you want to keep it locked right here. All of the players from the Democratic Party will be here. And of course, my brothers and sisters to the north, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and my morning stars all over the country and all over the world. Sending you so much love, Linear Bob and Andre and Kenneth. And let me see who else is. Barbara Bacon from Oak Park, Renee Criswell here in Chicago. Paula, how you doing, Paula? And Francis and AW, how you doing, everybody? Raphael, how you doing, sweetie? Jewel up there in New York, sending you all so much love. I want you to call me. Shirley in beautiful Philadelphia. I will not forget that, Shirley. Call me at 773-763. 9278 773-763-9278. What about the presidents of MIT, UPenn, and Harvard being grilled on efforts to counter anti-Semitism on campus? What do you think about that? On the same day, and there was a resolution in the House of Representatives equating anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. What should happen on a college campus? That's why we're still trying to get Dr. Julianne Malveaux, because she's been the president, not only of, she's the president emeritus of Bennett College for Women, but also she is a graduate of MIT, of one of these schools that was grilled. And, you know, my university experience was that you had everybody there, from the far left to the far right, you know, because you need to hear these ideas. That's where you hear them when you're in college or at a university. But that's not happening. So I want to know what your thoughts are. I mean, should they be held on the rack? And in fact, some of their donors have been demanding that they be fired from their jobs for not doing enough to shield these students from feeling unsafe. And feeling unsafe and being unsafe, that's a very real thing. But we've seen that with people who marched in support of Palestine. They've been doxxed. We are seeing people who are losing job offers. We're seeing donors pull massive amounts of money from these schools and colleges. I mean, so you tell me what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763. WCPT 773-763-9278 as we talk about the legal aspects of it and the social and political, but starting with the legal, of course, legal Q&A with CK. Let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. Donald Trump was accused of sending supporters to the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Federal prosecutors went further in tying the former president to the 2021 attack. In a new ruling, they accused him of lying about elections and encouraging violence. Prosecutors say they intend to introduce evidence of these acts at the former president's criminal election obstruction trial, which begins in the middle of the primary season in March. Senate negotiations over sending more aid to Ukraine are breaking down. Republicans are demanding U.S. border restrictions in exchange for billions in Ukraine aid. Yesterday, at least a dozen senators walked out of a classified briefing. And in other news, Senator Tommy Tuberville, the Republican from Alabama, has eased his hold on military promotions, ending a nearly 10-month, 1-year standoff, everybody. Israeli strikes in southern Gaza are overwhelming hospitals. Now, mind you, the Israelis told the Gazans to go south, and now they're bombing them in the south. More than 16,000 people have been killed already. 70% of them are women and children. A school where civilians were sheltering was bombed as Israel expanded its offensive in the south. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had a contentious meeting with families of the hostages, the Israeli hostages still held by Hamas, who accused him of not doing enough to return their loved ones. The fourth Republican primary is tonight in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy will be on the stage. Haley has emerged as the most viable alternative for Trump, although Former President Trump leads in the polls by a mile. Fully automatic weapons are reappearing on U.S. streets, everybody. A small device that plugs into some semi-automatic handguns and rifles can make them capable of firing, get this, 20 bullets in 1 second. 20 bullets in 1 second. The devices can be made using 3D printers. It's going to be a beautiful day in Chicago, albeit cloudy. 40 degrees will be the high. 44 degrees will be the high in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Partly sunny. No, I did not say partly cloudy, everybody. In the NBA, the Hornets will be playing Chicago tonight in Chicago. The Spurs will be playing Minnesota tonight in Minnesota. The NFL had a night off. Yay for them. The NHL, the Predators 4, Chicago 3, the Wild 5, the Flames 2. Whew. Those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. The presidents of 3 of the most prominent universities from the Ivy League were brought to Congress to testify. Harvard University, well, that was a slip, CK. Harvard University's Claudine Gay, the first Black president, by the way, of Harvard. The University of Pennsylvania's Liz McGill and MIT's Sally Kornbluth testified before the committee led by Representative Virginia Foxx, a Republican from North Carolina. The hearing gave Republicans an opportunity to express their frustrations, everybody, with the college presidents for, in their terms, not doing enough to aggressively condemn those on their campuses whose members they said foster anti-Semitism. I saw the hearings. I'm trying to figure out exactly what all of that means and what protections students have, faculty have, what are the obligations of these presidents? What are they supposed to do? You know what? Please call Alex, reach out to Dr. Malveaux. She is waiting on us right now. And you know what? I'm going to send you another number for her. And let's just see. Let me have her. In fact, I'm going to have her. I'm going to do that. But CK, very quickly, because I'm going to get Dr. Malveaux on since she has been the president of the university, and see.
Absolutely.
Just what the deal is. How did she see this yesterday? But how do you see this?
Well, Santita, I see this as a natural progression of what's happening in the war in Gaza. You know, we have students on most college campuses that are protesting the following one camp or another belief. Either they believe that what Israel is doing is wrong and that the Israeli government is engaged in genocide. So they are either pro-Palestinians or sympathize with the Palestinians, or they believe that Israel is right, Hamas was wrong, and in doing this, they are really advocating for Israel and advocating for all Jewish people. So we're seeing on college campuses this clash. And then there are a lot of people that fall in the middle. So colleges, and of course the Ivy League schools are going to get the greatest publicity because they're Ivy League schools. And so the fact that there's a congressional hearing to address these issues and basically attack the presidents of these 3 Ivy League schools was not surprising. It was just going to be a matter of time before it happened. What do I think about the legal questions surrounding it? The First Amendment, and I've been a First Amendment trial lawyer, as you know, Santita. The First Amendment of the Constitution technically does protect freedom of speech. It does not protect violence associated with freedom of speech. But it does protect freedom of speech. You have the ability also to assemble and to protest in a non-violent way. There would not be a civil rights movement. There would not have been civil rights if we didn't have the ability to protest as African Americans and as affected people in this country, as minorities in this country. So we understand that the First Amendment,
Dr. Malveaux's on.
the one of the amendments in the Constitution that affords us that ability. Now, we know historically that even as African Americans, when we were protesting and fighting for civil rights, your dad leading the way, one of the great leaders in that fight, Santita, that we were arrested. We were killed. We were attacked by dogs. We were harassed. Our houses were burned. We know the history and what has happened in this country surrounding protesting, not in a nonviolent way, and fighting for what we believed in. So if we play it forward to what's happening today, you don't even have to take a position on one side or the other. The question for me is, do these children have the right to voice their opinions on how they feel on college campuses? That's number one. And number two, what action, if any, do the colleges have to take when it escalates, the conduct escalates to harassment or violence?
Well, hold that thought.
See, that's the question.
So hold that thought, because we got Dr. Malveaux. My mistake. My board operator is brilliant. I sent the wrong number, so please forgive me, Dr. Malveaux. Dr. Malveaux and Attorney C.K. Hoffler have other media commitments, but CK has a legal commitment. She's got to get into court. And of course, Dr. Malveaux has another media commitment. But what about this? I mean, I was reading the Daily Mail. It's very interesting as you read all of these American journals. They say the presidents of the universities have been grilled, but the Daily Mail singled out the president of Harvard, first Black person to be the president, first Black woman too. They said she's defending Palestine marches. That's the headline. At heated congressional hearing on anti-Semitism. So what is this about? And what are the responsibilities of the president of a university? You're the president emeritus of the vaunted Bennett College for Women, but you also went to MIT. That's where you got your PhD. Dr. Malveaux.
Yes, I was cringing at the just the visual of these college presidents being spoken to very harshly. One Republican legislator, Congresswoman Fox from North Carolina, she said to answer and atone for what happened on their campuses. Well, answer, sure, or explain is a better word, but atone? Why should they atone? But, being a college president is like being a juggler. You got all these balls in the air. You've got all these constituents you have to satisfy: students, parents, faculty, staff, the community, the board of trustees, ultimately, because they're your bosses. And that's often a tightrope. Now we've got another tightrope. The conflict in Israel and with Hamas is like kryptonite. There's no right or wrong side. A right side, of course, what Hamas did on October 7th was horrific. The rape of women is horrific. But also the extent to which Palestinians have been pushed up against a wall is horrific. October 7th was perhaps contextually a response to a people who feel that they have been brutalized. I remember the Claude McKay poem, "If We Must Die," and it's called, Claude McKay was a Harlem Renaissance writer, and he said at the end, "Press the wall, dying but fighting back."
And in between that, let us die nobly. So they assign nobility to their fight, right? To their struggle, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, how college presidents are stuck between a rock and a hard place. They've got donors on all sides. They've got prominent alums on all sides. The best I think they can do is condemn what happened on October 7th, but also condemn what has happened to Palestinian people. And I would have to say, I watched part of the thing. I didn't watch all of it. I was really proud of these women, because they would not allow the Virginia Foxes of the world to force them to atone. And I use the word atone with much disgust, because what are they to atone for? And I think they all pushed back and said, and what about Islamophobia? Because the two go hand in hand. So they basically, they did their job. I think they did a good job. But I don't think this is over with. The Department of Education is investigating many campuses, these among them. Are they investigating for Islamophobia? Did they ever investigate for racism? You can go back to our annals and tell stories of our foremothers and fathers. My own mentor, Dr. Phyllis Wallace, recalled that the dormitories at Yale did not accept Black people. She spent her first year of graduate school living in the basement of a church with a very, obviously a pastor who had hospitality in mind, but really not a dormitory. She talked about how lonely she was. But that was the racism that was acceptable. I'm not suggesting that any form of hate should be acceptable. No anti-Semitism, no Islamophobia. But I'm saying that college presidents are placed in a space where they're juggling this, where they're juggling it. No matter what their personal sympathies are, they have people from every group asking them for support. They can, and they must condemn Hamas for October 7th, and if there's subsequent brutality, but then you've lost 15,000 plus Palestinians because of Israeli bombs. Can we condemn that too? Should we? Must we? With that enormous loss of life, and with the relatives of some of their students being involved in this carnage. So, as I say, I just think that they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and the violent, vociferous words that are coming from some of the people who are saying, well, everything is anti-Semitic, violent, vociferous words basically dash at others. Billboards around Harvard with students who are protesting with their likenesses lifted up.
Where's the hearing? Where's the hearing on that? What about the corporations that are threatening not to hire these people? I mean, why aren't we having a hearing on that, Dr. Malvo?
There you go. Well, there you go. There's a young sister at NYU who lost a coveted position because she showed some sympathy for Palestinians. So we really, I mean, this is beyond the pale. It's censorship at the worst order. If you don't show enormous sympathy for Israel and ignore what's happening to Gazans, the people who live in Gaza. Yeah, and it's so confusing there right now. I was just talking to a friend whose mother is there. Here's the story. First, the IDF told people to go south. Now they've gone south. Now they're telling them to leave the south. So where do they go? The United Nations said there's no place.
In between that, they're bombing the south.
After they told them to go there.
Okay. What is that?
After they told the people to go there. And you know, they sit on television and say, well, you know, we're doing our best, we can't. And they claim that, you know, Hamas is embedded with the population. But when you bomb a multi-story apartment building to get one Hamas person, you basically have sentenced all those other people, if not to death, to homelessness and to destruction.
Well, but let me ask you this. As a college president, are you supposed to explore those issues, talk about those issues? Do you have the space to speak about them freely? And I want to get that answer from you and from CK, from you as a former college president, as a former dean of one of the most respected universities on earth, as a PhD from MIT, and CK as a lawyer. But first, you, Dr. Malvo, I mean, how do you handle this?
Well, the thing, you know, the hard lesson that I learned is that sometimes you just have to shut up because actually you can do no right. But in this climate, no one wants to shut up. They want to speak out. And the speaking out is what will often, if people don't choose their words very carefully, the speaking out is what will get them in front of a congressional committee. It's what will get them in trouble, which is what will cause them to lose donors, which that's the punishment from hell is to lose donors, because the first job of a college president is to raise money, frankly. It's not to do intellectual whatever. It's to raise money. But, you know, there is something called, and Robert Franklin, a former president of Morehouse when I was at Bennett, talks about the moral authority of college presidents and about the responsibility to speak out about certain issues. I mean, he was really brilliant about that, and he's absolutely right. But the question is, at what cost, to what end? And you're constantly juggling that. It's not an easy place to be, especially in tumultuous times like these with basically the censorship groups out and ready to just pillory someone. That hearing was horrible. It was horrible. That Virginia Fox, atone for your campus? Oh, please. But none of her colleagues differed with her, and that was what was more troubling to me than anything else.
CK, any legal protections? I've got 1 minute.
Well, the legal protections, they've got to protect freedom of speech, but by the same token, they've got to protect the students from violence. I think those college presidents handled an impossible situation with a great deal of aplomb. and they should be applauded for that. And I think that there are no winners in this. They are not going to win. There are going to be consequences to their testimony, unfortunately for them. So, Santita, we just have to keep watching this, and we can't silence people who want to protest. We just can't. It's not going to happen. It never does work. So I think that we just have to stay tuned and every day watch this and understand that right now those college presidents have a thankless job because they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. So, and that the First Amendment, that's what it is. That's what gives people the ability to do this. But those college presidents have not violated the law in any way. These are political issues. That hearing was political 100%, had nothing to do with the law. And unfortunately, I've got to run, Santita. I've got to run to court. You told me to talk about Court TV today from 6 to 7 and on Friday from 6 to 7.
Eastern time.
Eastern time.
All right now.
Yeah.
6 to 7 Eastern time today and on Friday?
And on Friday.
All right.
And thank you to the Morning Stars who are going to speak. I'm sorry I have to leave, but when a judge says you got to be someplace, you got to be someplace.
Run.
So have a great day. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Dr. Malvo.
Dr. Malvo, I have about 30 seconds for you. If you could speak to those presidents 30 seconds, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell them to be careful. Tell them to make sure they have a good speechwriter or a group of people so that they must choose their words carefully. At the same time, they must speak if they choose to, if they feel free to, and they must never, never, never respond to someone who tells them to atone for their campus. We're dealing with young people, amazing young people on many sides of many issues. We've had many heated debates on campuses all over the country. That's what a campus is about.
Ooh, I wish I could have seen you up there yesterday. But then too, I mean, we would have had to run to Washington, Dwight McKee and Attorney Fancher, because they would have put her in prison. But I love it. The brilliant Dr. Julianne Malveaux. When can we catch you in media this week? I got about 10 seconds for you.
Next Monday, 9 a.m., Malveaux exclamation point, WPFW 89.3 FM. If anyone is here in the Washington area, we've got a book signing tonight at Mahogany Books at 7 p.m.
Okay, all right. And of course, you're on Roland Martin Show regularly. I wish she'd be on mine, but I'm loving her anyhow. Love Dr. Malveaux.
We can work it out.
Okay.
We can work it out.
Well,
Give me a regular day and we can hook it up.
We're going to do that. Santita Jackson Show right here on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about what happened with these college presidents yesterday. What should happen? What should be allowable on a college campus? What can you say? What can't you say? How can people feel safe and protected? And free. Back in just a minute. Dwight McKee and Mark Fancher, you all have all the runway you need. The ladies have had their say. Now the gents. Wow.
Well, they might have said it all.
Now, see, I can tell you've been married for a minute. Mark Fancher. What did my father say? Just tell her she's right. Just tell her she's right. Just tell her she's right. Just shut up. Just tell her she's right. My brother did something. He said, just tell her she's right. He squeezed his eyes real hard. I could not stop laughing. I said, oh, wow. He said, please. He said, you go home where you want to. I go home where I want to. I know what I got to live with. So I said, oh, boy. Oh, boy. But, boy, watching that yesterday, Dwight made me watch it. The parts of it that I could get. And, boy, I mean, just before we come back up, what were your impressions of it, Dwight?
Or do you
want to wait until we get on the air? What were your impressions?
I'll wait till we get on the air.
Okay, well, I'll just wait.
Wait till we get on the air.
Because, I mean, this was a whole lot to watch. But, you know, I think all of the influences, I mean, we're seeing how the role that legacies play going into school, even the gap year. The gap year is used at Harvard for unqualified or underqualified students of wealthy donors and alum to get themselves together. And so they don't even have to report their test scores. So this whole meritocracy, I mean, you think that this is a meritocracy. That's not what this is. So you're seeing how, hey, Trump said it. He said the game is rigged. Elizabeth Warren said the game is rigged, and it is. And it's not rigged in your favor. That's what you got to know. It's not rigged in your favor, Mark. I mean, whew. And then you see how these
rigged against you.
Rigged against you. I mean, and you see these folks, okay, I'm going to pull my money out the school, and then they're denying kids employment. We had a meeting yesterday over at Rainbow Push. Dwight was there. And when they send me the link, I'm going to send it to you, but they'll probably send it to you, so don't. I still haven't got the link for the 11 o'clock, but I will. I mean, these kids are in these in grad school and coming out of undergrad, and they are scared to death because they have been threatened with not being employed. People have already been fired, Mark, from their jobs.
Oh yeah. That has been the case for a very long time. It's just fortunate that that it's been raised to a level where people can see the contradictions.
Mark,
I mean,
thank you for
saying
that.
I even think about Jimmy Carter saying, as long as he's president, Andrew Young has got a job.
Oh yeah. And
Andrew Young goes and talks
1 minute
to the Palestinians, and all of a sudden, Andrew Young does not have a job.
Well, you know what he told my father. My mother was the one who pushed Andrew Young to talk to the Palestinian representative. When she came back from Lebanon, it was such a devastating experience. She went over to visit Yasser Arafat. That when she got home and kind of got herself back together, she flew to New York and she went to see him. And she said, look, you have got to we've got to deal with the Palestinians. That's the next big issue for us. And he looked at her, he said, Jack,
30 seconds.
do you know this is the third rail of American politics? I will lose my job. She said, what would Martin do? You serious? And then he lost his job. And the first place he came to make his first public appearance was at Push. I said, well, yeah, he would, because he couldn't speak anywhere. And he had to go to Africa.
10 seconds.
Couldn't even work here. Stand by. And Carter told Reverend, if you had given a portion of the support, I could have kept him. But
we can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Oh boy, everybody. The Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let us talk about what is happening on these college campuses. Indeed, the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn, Ivy League schools, among the most vaunted schools in the world, they were grilled on their efforts to counter anti-Semitism on campus. Some people are saying that, is this about countering anti-Semitism on campus or stifling Palestinian voices? How do you keep people safe? How do people feel safe? A lot of Jewish students are actually being threatened. Palestinian students are being threatened. Students who want justice for Palestinians are being threatened. Their faces and names are being put on billboards up at Harvard. No one's talking about that. Why don't you have a hearing about that? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. No one should feel unsafe on any place, let alone on a college campus. But you got to be able to have a free exchange of ideas as long as the exchange is elevated and not threatening. So I want to talk with attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers, and Dwight McKee, Dr. D, brilliant social scientist, the dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project, one of the founders of Operation Push. And well, let me start with you, Mark Fancher. What do you make of this? I mean, that hearing yesterday was a lot. And you just heard Dr. Julianne Malveaux as the president emeritus of Bennett, and her PhD came from, she earned her PhD at MIT. She was highly, profoundly insulted by what she saw.
Yes, well, I find anything that hack politicians do to be offensive, but this was particularly offensive. Just the hearing itself. But stepping back away from it and looking at the substance of the issues, I think our sisters in the preceding segment were absolutely correct that university administrators are charged with really walking a tightrope. They've got a difficult, needle to thread because on the one hand, there is the First Amendment that's present. And universities in particular are regarded as marketplaces of ideas where the discussion and the debate is expected to be more robust than it is in the broader society. That this is the place where you come with controversial ideas, where people battle it out, where they debate vigorously, where they challenge each other. And it's expected that through that type of exchange, that you're going to advance, the ability of the society and the academic community to think more, to analyze better. But on the other hand, university administrators are also bound by Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which requires that as long as their institution is receiving federal funds, that they cannot allow or sustain any types of activities which are racially discriminatory. So it imposes upon them an obligation to ensure that whatever conduct, whatever speech that goes on does not transform the university campus into a racially hostile educational environment that violates that provision. So it's a difficult balancing act for them, and I have been involved in those types of challenges in the past. But what it comes down to, from my perspective, is the question of consistency. To what extent do university administrators administer in a way that's fair and just and equitable, as opposed to favoring one group over another? And what we have seen many times is that university administrators do a pretty good job. I think that these three administrators that were called before Congress probably are doing the best job that they can do under very difficult circumstances. But what happens is that the broader community injects itself into the situation and creates a type of dynamic that, notwithstanding the efforts of the administrators, creates an unfairness, an imbalance, an injustice that's present. I can refer back to 1993. One of the university presidents that appeared yesterday was from the University of Pennsylvania, and it has its own history. Back in the early 1990s, my wife and I lived in Philadelphia, and we were able to observe an incident where there were sisters, young black women from Delta Sigma Theta sorority, who one evening were practicing for their step show. And there were white students who were leaning out of the dorm windows and screaming at them and yelling at them, telling them to be quiet, shut up, go away. And one student, who I believe was Israeli-born, yelled out, "You're a bunch of water buffalo. The zoo is down the street. Go back to the zoo." And once he said that, then it triggered a process in the university that resulted in him being charged with violating the university's racial harassment policy. I think that was appropriate. I mean, if you know anything about the history of Africans in America, then you know that or in the world, they are frequently compared to animals. It's coded language for racial, a derogatory racial kind of a reference, and so I think that was appropriate. But the world rallied around this young man. They began to accuse the university of succumbing to those who were political correctness fanatics. They labeled him as a darling of the First Amendment and all that it's supposed to stand for. There were furious debates One of them, my wife engaged in with Nat Hentoff, the late writer. All kinds of things, happened that portrayed this young white Jewish man as a horrible victim of political correctness. And meanwhile, these young black women who had been the targets of a horrible experience were left nameless and faceless and abandoned. And they reached a point where they just felt that it was futile for them to even push this because the world had risen up against them. And so nobody wanted to protect them. They wanted to protect only this young white man. And so it was only a few months after that the racial content of the Daily Pennsylvanian, the student newspaper at the university, began to run a series of racially offensive articles, commentaries, all kinds of content, which was extremely disturbing to black students on the campus. They were alarmed about it. They complained about it. They discussed it. They challenged it. They asked for this to end, and they got nowhere. And so on one morning, they engaged in a carefully designed plan to position black students at all of the distribution points for the Daily Pennsylvanian. And when the papers were dropped off, they confiscated them and took them all away, 14,000 papers, and dumped them in dumpsters. So when that was, and they left behind, they didn't, it wasn't a cowardly act. They left behind messages saying that we did it, and we did it because this paper, is offensive, and it really has gone beyond where you should go in a newspaper in terms of the type of content that it has racially, and people need to think about this. It was a First Amendment expression in the purest sense, but immediately the world lined up against these students and began to call for them to be criminally prosecuted. And so once again, my wife and I, on behalf of the National Conference of Black Lawyers, began to counsel them and advocate for them. And once we began that, then they targeted us. They began to say that we were irresponsible as legal professionals, that we were setting a bad example for these students, and that we were not teaching them to respect the First Amendment and the rights of free speech of everyone. And the arguments that we made that these were students who were a minority population, who were placed in a situation where these messages, which were racially hostile, were pervasive throughout the campus, that they could not be avoided, and that they were essentially in a racially hostile environment of the kind that is prohibited by Title VI. All of that fell on deaf ears. Nobody wanted to listen to that. They only wanted to listen to the arguments of the racist writers for the Daily Pennsylvanian who said that they had been silenced. So I think that, for those of us who are from oppressed communities, communities of color, marginalized communities, we see the contradictions. And when you have a hearing like yesterday, where Congress calls these presidents to account not for the general harassment of students on both sides, but focuses heavily, if not exclusively, on the plight of Jewish students, then it reaffirms and reinforces the viewpoint that we have that there is this institutional, historical imbalance that exists when we're looking at the balancing act that university administrators are expected to carry out.
Well, and throw this into the mix, Dwight McKee and attorney Mark Fancher. Hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman is calling for their resignations. The presidents of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn. Now, mind you, he went to Harvard. He's a Harvard graduate. He said, quote, they need to resign in disgrace, close quote, citing disgust, according to the CNN report that just came out an hour ago. He cited disgust with their testimony. He said throughout the hearing, the three behaved like hostile witnesses, he wrote on Twitter also known as X, exhibiting a profound disdain for Congress with their smiles and smirks and their outright refusal to answer basic questions with a yes or no answer. Dwight McKee, your thoughts, your response.
Well, I saw the hearings yesterday, and it was despicable to me. Is that they didn't treat them like they were college presidents. They actually treated them like they were overseers on a plantation. The issue is not what's happening in Israel. The issue is, do students have a right to have an opinion about what's happening in Israel? And what they was telling the presidents is that if those students' opinions don't agree with our opinions, then your job is to make sure that their opinions are suppressed until we sign off on the opinions that they have. It's very interesting that the same group of people that complains every day about the Holocaust and how come more people didn't speak out and how come there was so much silence when they found out what was going on in Germany and those camps. And they protest today because there was not enough activity to support them then, is now taking a position that people don't have the right to speak out on the injustice that they see happening to other people. It's so hypocritical and so inconsistent. It's really Dred Scott all over again to me. And I think that the presidents, that it puts them in a position where they become not purveyors of truth and justice and education and the teaching of students to have ideas in the public marketplace and the fight for ideas. I think you put them in a position to become overseers, and that their job now becomes to look at whatever is dissonant and does not agree with the opinion of those who give the most money, that their job is to rob these students of the opportunity to engage in ideas and to express their contempt or their support for those ideas. And it puts them in a position to then, the only remedy is for the presidents then to punish those students who they think are out of line. If my truth makes you uncomfortable, then you need to adjust your comfortability before I address my truth. And it's the same thing that's happening to blacks in Florida, where they will not allow us to teach certain truths because it makes some people uncomfortable to hear the truth. Same principle to me, and it's profoundly dangerous, and is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything else that I've seen.
Why do you say that?
Because that's what democracy is. By definition, democracy is the right for you to have an idea, to express your idea, to fight in behalf of your idea. And if you're telling me that my ideas somehow violate your supposition for my right to have an idea because it's not your idea, that it violates somehow the law, or it violates your opinion of what the law is, then it suppresses any freedom that I have of expression. If I don't have the right to fight for my ideas, if I don't have the right to engage in public debate about my ideas, then I'm really not a citizen. I'm just a tool of the state, or it's a tool of the power elite, or a tool of the status quo. And that's not democracy. That's autocracy and dictatorship and tyranny.
Attorney Mark Fancher, are there any protections that you have on a campus as a student, as a faculty member, I mean, let's just be there for a hot second.
Well, there is the First Amendment always. That's always available, and as I alluded to earlier, that it's expected that you're supposed to have more of an opportunity to express yourself on a university campus than you have in many other settings and many other places in society. But this wasn't about respecting what the law allows for students who express sympathy for Palestinians. What this was a further manifestation of a mindset and an approach which Zionists seem to be wed to. They're committed to this, and that is that either you accept what we say, either you comply with what we direct you to comply with, either you agree with us and conform your conduct to what we find to be acceptable, or we will force you to. And it betrays not only sort of a brutish, ignorant approach to trying to deal with people, but it also it betrays extreme ignorance about the nature of humanity and the nature of what life is all about. Because whenever you come to anybody and you try and force them to do something that they believe is wrong, then that just reinforces the commitment of the people that you're trying to force to comply, to trying to rebel, to trying to resist. And it exacerbates whatever you perceive the problem to be into an even bigger problem. So by bringing these presidents before Congress and basically treating them with such disrespect, treating them as though they don't warrant the type of respect that you would expect that university presidents should receive, then it creates widespread resentment among people who understand where they're coming from and who understand the objectives and the aspirations of those who express solidarity with Palestine. And the resistance is going to increase rather than decrease for those who are irresponsible and who have been responsible, or who are the ones who are the perpetrators of intolerable and unacceptable harassment of Jewish students. Then it's going to cause them to become ever more resentful, and it's going to cause them to do more. So you just don't deal with people that way. You don't try and force them to do that, but that seems to be part of a standard part of the playbook for Zionists. We will force you.
Well, it takes me back 40 years. I know I bring it up a lot, but I saw so much. It was a gift to have had that experience. Excuse me, in my Harvard interview. When I sat down after 45 minutes in the pre-interview, my life did not make sense to the pre-interviewer. He couldn't make sense of the fact that my father went to the University of Chicago. He said, that's a really, really great school. Right? Your father went there? I'm like, yeah. I said, in fact, on a full scholarship. Really? Huh. Your mother doesn't work outside the home. Oh, your brother's at St. Albans. Oh, wait a minute, you live over here. Oh, wait a minute. You've been to Cuba? My life wasn't making sense. A Black girl, I guess, was not supposed to do those things. And when he finally asked me after 45 minutes, what is your father's name? And I told him, I knew it was going to be an issue. And my mother wanted to go to the interview with me because my parents had taken such a hit over their stance on Israeli security and Palestinian justice, because 40 years ago, you couldn't even mention the term Palestinian, the noun, the people. I said, no, Mom, I'm going to be okay. It's a group of us, 4 of us are going today, and 4 of us are going on one day, 4 of us are going on the other day. It's going to be all right. And, but my mother knew, but she uncharacteristically let me go. But when I walked into the room, this gentleman, Mr. Cohen, looked at me and he said, I don't like your father or his politics. Let's see about you. And the question that they kept pressing me on, Dwight, was, if you get into Harvard, are you willing to distance yourself from your father and his politics? I said, absolutely not. You know, as a 17-year-old, you don't sass your adults, your seniors. So I was defenseless, essentially. And my parents would have gotten on me, Dwight, you know that, if I had retaliated. I had to let my parents fight that battle. But I mean, this is not new. Dwight, I got about 90 seconds for you before we carry this a little bit over on the other side. Your thoughts? Where do you see this going?
I think it's going to be. I think one, it really exposes the how this country operates and the inconsistency, and who has the most power and who's in control, and their willingness to, when necessary, to impose that at the expense of anybody else's right and privileges. And so I think it does two things, as Mark said. One is it not only exposes that there is a imbalance in terms of who has control of education and politics, but also it jeopardizes a lot of the Jewish students who don't feel that way. They are much more democratic and much broader in their thinking, and they themselves are anti-Zionists. And it puts them in a position where people believe that they are like the Zionists that are in control.
And they're not.
And it jeopardizes their relationships, huh?
And they're not. I mean, it's just like this is such an unfair. Stay right there. I want to come to. Hey, everybody, stay on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. We're going to get some more thoughts from Attorney Mark Fancher and Dwight McKee about this issue. I mean, just what should a college campus look like? I mean, what should happen? And who should be protected? Everybody should be protected. Everybody should feel safe. But you can't bully people into your point of view. That's not going to work. Can't wait to be with you on the Santita Jackson Show tomorrow. God bless everybody. And Dr. Shanina Knighton is still listening. Oh, my girl. So, I mean, where do you see this going, Attorney Fancher?
Well, I really, as disturbing as all of this is in the moment, I think that ultimately this is all going to work to the good. We have not seen contradictions regarding Zionism, Palestine, exposed in the way that we've been seeing them in the last number of weeks. Not just in Gaza, but here in the U.S. as well. And what it does is it continues to fertilize this growing movement toward justice for Palestine. And I think that whenever you target, whether it's university presidents, whether it's activists who are acting in solidarity with Palestine, the more that you do that, the more it raises the level of consciousness of people. And I think it's particularly important, I plan to write about this, that it's raising the level of consciousness of people of the Jewish faith, that in ways that they've never been forced to confront the contradictions between Zionism and the faith that they hold so dear, they're having to confront it now. And I think ultimately it's going to cause them to have to make a decision about which direction they're going to go in. Either they're going to continue to support this very evil, political, cynical, cowardly system called Zionism, or they're going to stand firm in the purity of the Jewish faith and all of the good and wonderful things that it represents, through its tenets and through the scriptures and through the teachings of the prophets and all others. And I know which direction I know which way they're going to go. And I think that ultimately they're the ones who are going to make a difference in this entire situation globally, because the Palestinians, Hamas, surrounding Arab countries, solidarity activists, all of them can pound away and pound away and pound away at Zionism as much as they want, and they can inflict all kinds of damage. But what's going to deliver the knockout blow is people of the Jewish faith of goodwill who are from within going to cause the entire thing to collapse. And the more that they withdraw support, from the Zionist regime, and the more that they engage in organized efforts to try and bring it down, maybe even through an Israeli revolution, the more likely it is that all of this is going to be resolved in a just way.
Dwight, your thoughts?
I agree with Mark, but I also think that what's going to happen, and which I was talking about yesterday, is I think that, Netanyahu, who is really trying to operate with impunity as he commits genocide and ethnic cleansing, I think has this hubris cause America has co-signed on it because Israel plays such a strategic role in American interests in the Middle East, and he's exploiting that in order to take over, the rest of Palestine. Mm-hmm. But what's going to kick in is I don't think he understands America that well. That the United States will abandon him when it's in their interest in a heartbeat, and they will get them out there, and just like they did in Afghanistan and Iran, they will get them out there fighting 20-year wars, have them leave home and country and family, trying to operate with the United States. And when it's the United States' interest, boy, they'll jump in their planes and leave them high and dry. And I think what Israel is setting itself up for is a war with the whole Middle East, where the United States will not be involved, will pull out, and they're going to pay a terrible price for believing in a country which is pure mercenary in its foreign policy. I think that they're really running the risk of setting themselves up for a terrible downfall. Particularly if they're counting America to go all the way with them. And we're about to see this happen in the Ukraine. The Ukraine, all these people have put their lives on the line, and they're my country, 'tis of thee, and boom, 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 boom. And in the next 3 weeks, they're going to cut half the funding from the Ukraine and leave those people high and dry. Right now, America's paying all of the salaries, the teacher salaries, the hospital salaries. They're paying for the economy. But in about a month, when the politics change, they're going to pull that money away, and those people are going to become victims of Russian hostility. And they're going to pay a terrible toll for having gotten strung out there like they did.
Mark, to Dwight's point, we're watching the narrative turn already, right? I mean, for the first time, you're seeing Israeli officials questioned. I mean, kind of pushed up against the wall by Wolf Blitzer, Dan Abash, and people like that. And then I know so many Jewish people who absolutely oppose what's happening over there. And to me, they're getting caught in the crossfire. They are also being threatened with job loss or having their jobs withdrawn. They are facing hostility within their family. I mean, this is a whole lot. I mean, why do you think this issue has gotten under the skin of so many people, Mark?
Well, it really, when you get right down to it, it represents possibly one of the worst manifestations of how imperialism dominates and manipulates people for its own interests. This has never really been about trying to provide a safe haven for persecuted Jewish people. It's never been about that. It's always been about trying to gain geopolitical and strategic advantage in a region of the world where there's lots of oil. I mean, that at the bottom is what it's all about. And, it has used, imperialism has used the misfortune, the discrimination and the exclusion and the marginalization of a religious community in order to advance its own interests. And that's all that it's ever been about. And what we know from history is that whenever imperialism finds that it no longer has a need for a strategy that it has employed, whenever it no longer is benefiting from supporting or sustaining a system or a leader or anybody else that has in the past been beneficial for them, then they abandon them at the drop of a hat, just like Dwight was saying. And it's happening now. And I think that ordinary people, are beginning to understand it. They can't necessarily comprehend it completely yet. They're not able to analyze it accurately yet, but they're beginning to see how it's touching them, how it's impacting them, and how it's affecting them, and the bankruptcy of the idea and the supposed ideals upon which the system is built. And so the more that they become conscious, the more that they become aware of it, I think the quicker they are to turn on it and to go in a different direction. And, all that they really need to do is to look at some history. In Africa, in the aftermath of many of the liberation movements and independence movements that were fought in Africa to get rid of colonialism, what imperialism did is it installed a number of strong man leaders, strong armed kinds of people who to preside over these countries, these supposedly independent countries in Africa. And their role, their job was to allow for the empire to continue to have access to Africa's resources. And in exchange for that, these dictatorial, strong-arm, strong-man kinds of leaders were allowed to raid the national treasuries and to enrich themselves and to do whatever was necessary in order to keep the people in line. So this neo-colonial reality that Africa faced was often presided over by these very brutal, dictatorial, vicious kinds of people. But as time went on, as resistance continued, it became clear to the empire that these kinds of leaders were no longer useful for them because they were so clearly oppressive, so clearly violent that it became repugnant. The rest of the world really hated this and they resisted it. So what they did is they transformed the nature of neocolonialism. They moved away from these dictatorial kinds of people and put in people who were more pleasant, people who were more charismatic, people who seemed by all outward appearances to be more rational and more concerned about human rights, when in fact, these people were allowing access to Africa's resources at the same rate and in the same way that their predecessors had. So imperialism makes adjustments. It makes changes. It abandons that which is no longer useful. Mm-hmm. And in the same way that it abandoned the dictators, sometimes the CIA was responsible for helping to get rid of some of these dictators in Africa. The U.S. government, the Pentagon, they would participate in doing it because these people were no longer useful. In the same way that America turned on its so-called friends that were, presiding over these countries, it will turn against Zionism, just as Dwight said, when it becomes clear that it's no longer sustainable and that it's no longer beneficial to the preservation of their influence and domination of the planet.
Yeah, Mark, the natives tried to tell the world these guys speak with forked tongues. See, we had 80 treaties with them. They broke every one of them.
That's right.
And Mount Rushmore is in the Black Hills. The Black Hills was the sacred territory of the natives. And what they thought about that treaty was they put 4 60-foot statues of the president right in the middle of the sacred territory. So that the natives have to look in the face of those who had lied to them and exploited them. And so that's the lesson of history to me, is that I always, and I kid Santita about this all the time, is the last time we saw Afghanistan, who had given up life, liberty, home, to become good Americans, quasi-Americans, they were chasing airplanes down the runway trying to jump on the wing to get out of there. And
I mean, and I'm not laughing at them. I'm just, the visual on that was like, because they knew if they stayed behind, they'd be killed. And,
the last time we saw the Vietnamese, they was diving on the back of helicopters, holding on to the tail, trying to get out of, because they had made the mistake that they believed that their relationship with the United States was permanent. And they put everything on the line. And as soon as America pulled out, they were slaughtered by the thousands. And so you really run the risk when you cut a deal with the devil, that the devil, that Jesus said there's no truth in him. He's a liar from the beginning. And so it is inevitable that he's lying to you. And they're going to leave these people out there, having made all these enemies in the Middle East, when they could have been negotiated some real relationships. And America's going to leave them high and dry, and they're going to end up having to fight all of the major countries in the Middle East.
And angering the military.
And that's what I think is setting up.
Angering the higher ups in the military, too. Because, for some of our top military brass to go over there and say, you know what, this is on them. They ignored everything that we told them. And on and on and on and on it goes. It's hubris. It's excessive pride and arrogance. When you think, Mrs. Clay Evans, Mrs. Luther May Evans, our first lady, the first lady of our church, she said, you know where you've been, but you don't know where you're going. All you know is where you've been. You don't know what's around the corner and down the road a piece. You don't know. Relationships change on a dime. Oh my gosh, they change. Well,
they really do.
Yeah.
Well,
please.
Well, all you have to do, Mark, is look at how the Jews got there in the first place. Is that the British had cut a deal with the Ottomans that if they fight with them in World War I, that they'd be secure, that they would maintain Ottoman Empire. And as soon as the war was over, they flipped that thing and took over Palestine and began to import the Jews there at the expense of the Ottoman Empire, who was in control of it before. I mean, you have to really have a sense of history and know who and what you're dealing with. And just like they sold out the Turks and the Ottomans, I have no doubt that when it's convenient or inconvenient, they will sell the Zionists out right down the river.
They definitely will. And many of us are old enough to remember when Muammar Gaddafi, if you didn't know better, you would think that his first name was Madman, because all of the reports about him was Madman Muammar Gaddafi, terrorist Madman Muammar Gaddafi. And then you went through a period where those first names were dropped, that he was regarded as this wonderful guy. For a period, the United States loved Muammar Gaddafi. They celebrated him. They thought that he was the greatest thing ever, because during that period, he was acting consistent with the U.S. agenda. But then he was no longer acting consistent with the U.S. agenda, and he went back to being a terrorist again, and ultimately became a terrorist to the point that they ended up killing him through rectal disembowelment. So, we have to understand how quickly they change, and I do really think that the U.S., the Western Empire, generally, Western countries are not going to be content with just surrendering Palestine because they still need it for strategic advantage. But I don't think that they will hesitate to become friends with many of the surrounding countries that right now they may demonize. But somehow they're going to find virtue in these countries, and they're going to become their new allies. And the Zionists are going to be the great enemy because the masses of people have determined that they're destructive and in many ways demonic. And so the U.S. will join right into the chorus and say, yes, the Zionists must go. And now we have our new friends here, who are in that region. And we're going to go with them and with their agenda.
Well, they're already turning the narrative by featuring, just letting the Palestinian narrative creep in. They're already doing it. You can see it.
Yeah.
And you can, if you just read the comments that follow news stories, you see it. All the quiet part is being said out loud, and it really brings a chill to me for our Jewish brothers and sisters who don't, quite frankly, whether they believe in this or not, because it endangers them all. And that is what is unsettling. And when you're a friend, you tell people, don't do this. If the head of the Pentagon, if Secretary Austin is telling you, you are flirting with strategic failure, don't do this, y'all need to stop, and you don't listen, beyond the fact that this is inhumane and cruel and wicked and evil, just
well again, when in World War II, Japan was our enemies, the dirty Japs, and the Russians were our allies. They the ones who was on the boat with Churchill and Roosevelt. Stalin was on the boat with Churchill and Roosevelt. Now the Japanese are our biggest allies, our great friends, and the Russians are our enemies. This thing will flip on you in a heartbeat. And so I almost feel sorry for those Jews that have bought the party line, that have gotten swept up in this and believe, that they are not only the chosen people, that they're going to be a protected class. Because I can see, just like Mark's analysis I thought was brilliant, I can see this thing flipping in a heartbeat as the momentum changes, which is in process now. And much of the world is siding against Israel.
I'm saying we're
and
watching
America
it
has
flip.
to find its place in there.
We're watching it flip right now. We're watching it flip, and we're watching it flip, because anytime you're watching more sympathy that is on display for the Palestinians, something has already flipped. It's already flipped, and you're just going to see more of it. Something has already flipped, and I'm glad I saw a chunk of these hearings yesterday. I'm going to go back and watch a little bit more, because I felt it was important to. Thank you so much, Dwight. It was important to watch, but the quiet part is being said out loud. This is not new. This has been going on for a minute. Absolutely. But now everybody's talking about it. And a lot of people have experienced it. They're sick of it. And you just have to be very careful. I think of Miss Luther May, Dwight. You know where you've been. You don't know where you're going. You better watch yourself. And she would say that all the time. All these simple, but these sayings were so profound. They stay with me. They'll stay with me for the rest of my life. Yes.
Well, when they went after Kanye and they went after Kyrie, it was acceptable. Now they're going after college presidents, and it's not as acceptable. But you see that same pattern emerging, and that same hubris emerging. And so, but in conclusion, for me, my encouragement is coming from like these young students that we met with yesterday.
From If Not Now.
Who are very courageous.
If Not Now, I want people to know we met with If Not Now yesterday. They got a chance to meet Reverend and Mrs. Jackson, and it was Mark, it was wonderful to see these kids didn't see him run for president or anything like that. But Dwight, you remarked that they really received him as a hero, as an iconic freedom fighter. Did they not, Dwight?
They did. And to see how principled and courageous and bold and brave that they are
Mm-hmm.
In this point in time, and they're willing to put their careers and futures on the line for what they believe in, to fight for what they believe in. And these were young Jewish students. Was extremely exciting and encouraging to me. Such a gracious bunch of young people. And it gives me, I'm like you, Mark, again, it gives me hope for the future, that there really is behind this dark cloud a real silver lining.
Well, the three of us know God very well, and we know him well enough to know that he's not going to sit by forever and allow for his holy word and for him and all that he stands for to be so radically and demonically distorted by a bunch of political cynics. And he has touched the heart of those young people, I'm sure, as he's touching the heart of many people who are adherents of the Jewish faith. And, we know for sure that he will win. You can't fight him. You can't box him.
Your arms are too short. I mean, and
That's
if
right.
you just believe, you got to know God has already won. So you better go on and get on God's side. I mean, I love the song, "If it had not been for the Lord on my side, where would I be?" But I think it's off. If I had not been on God's side, where would I be? We shall overcome. God is on our side. No, I am on God's side. I'm going to march to victory. That's really the key. Got to get on God's side. Got to do that, everybody. So we need to do right and stand against wickedness and evil. There's such a thing. Stand against the devil. No matter what your earthly cost, you have eternity to pay for what you did not do for God over here. And so I'm just trying to be on God's side. That's all I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be on God's side. How about that piece? I'm going to stay right there. Whew. I love you guys. You all are the best. Is there anything you'd like to say before we go, Mark?
No, just wishing everyone well. And I've got to race off now before people get angry at me.
Oh,
but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I don't want them to get angry with you.
Yeah.
But thank you so much.
No, they won't. And Dwight, behave yourself, please.
Oh my gosh.
Too late. Too late, Mark. Too late.
It's frightening. It's frightening. It's frightening. It's frightening. It's frightening. If I could just, Mark, get those lip clamps, whew, I'd be in the mix. Just to help him not say some things like, wait a minute, what? What you just say? Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Okay, let me just make sure.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Mark, I always appreciate your insight and your wisdom.
No,
and hopefully you can come down for the conference next week.
I'm gonna send you information on it, Mark.
Yeah, let me know about it.
A summit that we're gonna have on peace in the Middle East. So I'm gonna send you that information after we have this meeting today at 11 today. Just wanted to get more shape.
I'll be on the lookout for that.
Oh yeah, it will be Friday and it will be Saturday.
Okay, that's a possibility.
Yeah, it should be something really, really great.
All right. Well, y'all have a blessed day.
Send you so much love.
All right, you too.
Love you all, everybody. All right, love you, Dwight. Love you, Mark.
All right.
Thank you. Love you, Alex. Have a great one. Morning stars. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show.